I'm Jason Bonsall, and this is In Response To. Haven't made an In Response To video in quite a long time, a couple of years, I think. Just saw a news story out of Canada. Today's May 1st, 2020. On Saturday, April 18th, there was a mass shooting in Canada, a very rare mass shooting in Canada. 22 people have died now from that. And Justin Trudeau came out today, just a couple hours ago, and announced that assault weapons of the sort of, an AR-15 that are in the news so often in America are now illegal in Canada. Just that fast, just that easy, seemingly. How many incidents like that one that we just had, they just had on Saturday, have we witnessed and suffered in the United States over the last 10 years? And to what end? None. No change. You know this. I don't have to give you a history lesson. The fact that Canadian lawmakers decided to outlaw assault rifles is a big step. A lot of debaters, opponents of something like that, may want to say that wouldn't stop most of the killings, the gun killings, murders, in the United States, which are committed with pistols. And no one really is talking about outlawing the ownership of a handheld weapon, a pistol. Any talk of suspension of the Second Amendment, which is just a very loose way of saying gun control, I think, just be specific. There's no need to be that nebulous when talking about what you want to do or what other people are doing that you're afraid of. I should say, what other people are offering to do or suggesting we do, because no one's done anything. Nonetheless, it's a big step for Canada and an important step. It says a whole hell of a lot about the differences between Canadian law and the United States law. You probably don't need me to tell you this either, even if you don't know anything about Canada's law, as I don't. In the United States, we have a thing called the Constitution, and we have amendments to it. The first 10 being called the Bill of Rights. Now, people generally seem to think the first 10 amendments of the Bill of Rights are unassailable. They can't be touched, no matter what. Well, that's not true. I mean, as a matter of law, that's not true. It's not even true as a matter of good governance. It's not true as a matter of good principle. It's not true as a matter of ethics. When the Constitution was written and proposed in 1787, it didn't have amendments. How silly would that be? You don't offer a brand new thing up for approval with amendments. You just include the things. After the Constitution was passed, ratified in 1789, since it had been a very contentious issue during the ratification process, a lot of states were clamoring for certain amendments, a certain Bill of Rights. It did come to pass that a Bill of Rights was proposed, and eventually 10 of what were 12 proposals at that time, 10 were ratified in 1791. So when you think about, for one thing, the fact that we almost didn't have any amendments, because one of the big arguments against what became the Bill of Rights, and any amendment for that matter, was that why specify, why make explicit these rights? By doing so, you're going to imply that anything not on this list are not available to the people. We the people were meant to have all the freedoms not explicitly curtailed or denied to us by the Constitution. So by adding these 10 amendments to begin, just out of the gate, it kind of made it look like anything this document doesn't say you can do, you can't do. That was a big concern back then. Probably still should be now. But also the fact that there were 12 proposals. What happened to the other 2 amendment proposals? What are they? We don't need to go into that right now. Point being, what if the Second Amendment had been one of the 2 or then 3 that didn't get ratified? Where would we be now? Would people be clamoring for such an amendment, written in just the same way? Certainly not. There's no need for that language in the Constitution. If we had, for any reason, an amendment explicitly granting American citizens the right to bear arms, it would certainly be worded more carefully if it was written now. The fact that we are slaves to this document, a document that was meant to set us free, to make us the greatest nation in the history of the world. It is now our master, apparently. Anyone who thinks the Second Amendment, or any amendment for that matter, is so Teflon that no matter what happens in real life, nothing can be done to alter the document, is missing the point of what a written Constitution is. It's not our boss. It's our slave. We, the people, we, the consent of the governed, make the law, make the government. This is definitely not to say that the Constitution, any part of it, including the amendments, should be changed easily, or recklessly, or cavalierly. I'll get back to that in a moment. These rights are given to us by our Creator, so says a certain document. Creator or not, irrelevant for the moment. The point is, the Constitution does not give us anything. It spells out what is ours already. But it is a piece of paper written by men, and it can be wrong. I don't believe in the existence or even the wisdom of absolute rights. Whether or not they actually exist, which I deny, they could still be a wise thing to pretend exist. But I don't think that's true either. I think we're much better off figuring out what works for us and keeping it. And what doesn't, jettison. We've had enough trial of the Bill of Rights. Each of them have been with us for over 200 years. We don't want people throwing out or altering any of those 10 amendments easily, without a great deal of consideration. The First Amendment, a fairly well perfect amendment. People might quibble about one of the 5 parts, or maybe how some of it is worded. It is quite old after all. But if we were going to write something to protect or enumerate the rights that are listed in the First Amendment, if we were going to write that amendment now, I think it would come out much the same as it was written over 200 years ago. Second Amendment, not so much. Much has been made. Enough has been made. I don't need to say it. Nobody wants to hear me say this, but I'll say it anyway. Everyone has seen the destruction caused by not even just today's weapons, for 50 years already. We know the Founding Fathers had no idea about what was to come in that regard. And that likely has a lot to do with why the amendment was written so loosely. It was not future-proof. Nothing is. But if we took an approach to rights, like I'm proposing, a utilitarian view instead of an absolutist view, we could much more easily jettison things that don't work for us, that have proven themselves to not work for us. The fact that so many Americans, and let me just guess and say half, a fair enough guess, I think, half of Americans would reject any alteration to the Second Amendment. I don't know that. I'm sure there are countless statistics and polls done to express those stats, but I don't know them. At any rate, the fact that so many would refuse any change at all, I believe betrays an all too common subservience to the notion of abstract right. The idea that there is something up there that's in charge of what we are allowed to do. I'm not even talking about a God. I'm talking about ideas. That ideas are more than us. We can't even change what ideas we serve. It's ludicrous. We write our own government. Canada did it. There should be nothing stopping us from doing it. But for the whole life of the country, people have been led to believe that there is such a thing as abstract right. This is not merely an academic talking point or argument. I'm not bludgeoning you over the head. Bludgeoning you. There you go. With notions of utilitarianism. This is real. I mean, obviously this is real. 22 Canadians are now dead. How many hundreds of Americans have died in similar situations? Recklessly, needlessly. I know nothing will change anyone's mind. Not in this format. Just felt compelled to come back to In Response To after a long absence and say something on this topic. Something that I don't expect to hear talked about in this way in any media, because it's too grounded in philosophy. But it's an important alternative approach to thinking about governance, and one that I wish people would find more accessible, because it's really not that difficult. The number of murders in this country committed with handheld weapons, handguns, seems virtually impossible to address with legislation of that sort. We're not going to take away people's right to own handguns. Assault weapons, however, you can kill a lot of people in a short amount of time. Trudeau mentioned it in his short press conference. They're designed solely for killing the most amount of people in the shortest amount of time. Likely true. I mean, they are military weapons after all. I'm not a hunter of any sort, so I don't feel the emotional or lifestyle pull to defend something like this for the purpose of hunting. There are certain hobbies people could take up, hypothetically, that are banned, should be banned, and that the people who would practice them if they were allowed accept that. They acknowledge the fact that, yeah, you know what? This would be super dangerous for everyone, and whoops, I have to give up a hobby. Oh well. The whole dance around gun rights and gun ownership I don't understand why so many people are okay with it. Like people who defend the current state of things. Why? What are you afraid of? Another old talking point you don't need to hear me say, but I will anyway. If you think you're going to stop the government coming for you for some conspiratorial reason you might hold, because you have a couple rifles, those days are gone, dude. You're not stopping the government. I don't care what kind of weapons you hold. You don't have a nuclear weapon. You don't have a tank. As if a tank would do it. Guess that's it. Trudeau said Canadians deserve more than thoughts and prayers. Well, yeah. No shit. So do we. Let's do something once, huh?